At 28 years old, I was shot and paralyzed from the chest down. I had two options. I could stop and let the things I cannot control me, or I could move forward and put my energy into things that would improve my life and those around me. I chose to move forward and surround myself with risk takers, innovators, and leaders who've chosen the same path. Join us on the journey. Hello, welcome to another episode of Forward with me, Derek Herrera, and my guest today, Paul Grand. Paul Grand is a good friend of mine. He is one of my first mentors and advisors in the MedTech industry. He is a former venture capitalist and then started a nonprofit organization called MedTech Innovator, which is the largest incubator and accelerator for any early stage medical technology or medical device companies in the world. With Spinal Singularity, we're fortunate to go through the MedTech Innovator program, and it was incredibly helpful, I would say transformative for me personally and for our company at that time in 2015. And since then, MedTech Innovator has continued to grow and expand and help so many different companies with connections to strategic investors, advisors, and also with funding. So MedTech Innovator offers hundreds of thousands of dollars in cash prizes for any companies that participate and at the end can win those cash prizes in addition to all of the other benefits of being in the program. And so you can learn more about the program at medtechinnovator.org. It is a nonprofit organization, and for any entrepreneurs or aspiring entrepreneurs in the industry, would highly suggest that you consider applying. There's no equity, there's no strings attached, literally just upside and benefit. Paul has also become a good friend of mine because he is incredibly energetic, incredibly positive, and has a phenomenal attitude, which has led to some of the major successes he's had along the way in his career, both as an entrepreneur, as an investor, and a venture capitalist, and as a CEO of a nonprofit organization. So really had a phenomenal time chatting with Paul and some amazing lessons learned about resilience that I hope you'll benefit from. And so I hope you enjoy this episode. And if you do, please consider leaving us a review, a 5-star rating if you're listening to us on Apple, or sharing if you're on Spotify or any other platforms that we're pushing this podcast through, with the goal of trying to help reach more people that can benefit from the message that we're sharing. So this is an episode of Forward with me, Derek Herrera, and my good friend, Paul Grand. Hope you truly enjoy this and have a great week. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Derek. Great to be here.
Pleasure's all mine. Appreciate you making time out of your day to come and chat with me and share more about your journey and the work that you all continue to do. And so would love to learn more about the story and your background, specifically about what your journey was like before you got into the role you're in now with MedTech Innovator. And so would love to hear a little bit more about the path that you went on and what led you down that path.
Sure. So really happy to be here, Derek. My journey is one that started as an entrepreneur. So from the young age of, I think, 12, I was a computer programmer, creating software for myself and for my parents, for my mom to use as a teacher, for my dad to use as a dentist to help, his practice. And in college, I continued as an entrepreneur. And as soon as I graduated, ran a bunch of companies, started 8 different companies after college. 3 of them were in the medical space. And the last of them was a pharmaceutical company. So I started MedTech and pharma companies, the last of which led me on a different journey, which was to become a venture capitalist. And I never expected to do that. That was something that I thought maybe would be a short detour, learn about the venture business, and then I would jump into another company. But almost 12 years later, I was still working as a MedTech venture capitalist at RCT Ventures, which I love. It's just a terrific company. And along the way, I'd started this competition with the idea of basically highlighting innovators, which we'll talk more about. And that led me to MedTech Innovator. So I've had that journey kind of from all sides, from being an entrepreneur, always trying to get money, to being a venture capitalist with plenty of money, and an endless number of people who were interested in accessing it. And that led me to where I am today, which is really just helping entrepreneurs on that journey.
That's awesome. 8 companies, so that's a lot. And we love talking about adversity and challenges too. So, how many of those were, what would you rate the success on those 8? Obviously, I guess from extremely successful, massive exits to moderate success to failures. What's your hit rate there?
Yeah, so I would say I'd put them in the moderate success rate category. So some that are still operating, others that were acquired. We had one that rolled up and went public. So a bunch of different outcomes along the way, and some failures as well. Learned a lot from those failures, as we all like to say, right? But I'd say on average, I'd say moderate success.
That's awesome. Yeah, even just having one acquisition or one success is awesome. So that's amazing. And then and so what drove you to become the venture capitalist at RCT? Was it working with them, or like what, you just needed a break, or what was your frame of mind when you made that decision to join them?
Yeah, it's it's an interesting path. So when I was an entrepreneur, I was running, as I said, one of my last companies was a biopharma company, and we were in the business of creating an adjuvant for cancer therapy that would be used to open up the blood-brain barrier. And we had a clinical setback, or I should say, a setback in the preclinical work for our clinical lead, where we realized that the ingredients that we were working with weren't going to be stable enough for a long period of time, and we're going to require frozen formulation. And so we went back to screen for other molecules, and that takes a long time. And while I was doing that, one of the board members who was working at RCT and working with me said, "Hey, I noticed that there's just not a lot for you to do right now while the screening's going on. We have a bunch of other companies we've been incubating, and love you to take your pick at running of one of those part time." And I said, "Oh, this is a great idea." And they literally had like 8 different companies, and I picked one of them, which was in the anti-infective space, and said, "Hey, I could really make a difference here. Could get some of the studies done that need to get done, make sure those happen properly." So I took that on as a project. And while I was doing that, I started hanging out a lot of the local universities in Southern California and looking at their technology. And I had this vision that I said, wow, there's all these incredible universities in Southern California, and not a lot of people, especially in the Los Angeles area, who were serving them with capital, with early stage capital in the medtech space. So I went to the fund, RCT Ventures, which stands for Research Corporation Technologies. And I said, "Hey, I have this idea to do a seed fund in Los Angeles to help some of these innovations." And they said, "Well, why don't you just come work for us?" And so that's what got me into working with RCT. They knew I could do the job. I think if I had sent in my resume cold, they probably would have said, "Oh, we could do better. We could find somebody who has a PhD, or someone who has an MBA, or someone who has a PhD, MBA, JD." There's all those great people out there. But they knew me, and they knew my work ethic and my track record, and they just really liked working with me. And so I wound up joining the firm. And as I said, I really thought it would be a short stint. I figured I'd be there for a year, find some amazing company, and jump out and go run it. But nearly 12 years later, I was still there.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's amazing. And what were the more enjoyable parts of being a VC? Like, what was it about that role that made you want to stay there, or that kept you there for 12 years?
Well, I think being a venture capitalist lets me scratch 2 different itches. Number one is seeing a lot of technology. That's always been something that has been both, I'd say, maybe one of my strongest suits, and some would say that's also maybe a negative thing, is that I'm easily distracted. Right, I like to look at lots of things, and I don't like to do one thing for very long. If I'm stuck in one, same position for 2 years or 3 years or whatever, and we're not innovating, we're not making a lot of change, that's not as much fun for me. I'm definitely someone who likes to build and to innovate a lot. And so being a venture capitalist gave me that ability to see lots and lots and lots of different things and to have an impact on a lot of them. Additionally, the other thing that's really nice about being a venture capitalist is having access to capital. And as an entrepreneur, you're always out there raising capital. You're always, whether you're formally raising capital or kind of informally making those relationships that are going to lead to your next potential investors, you're always doing that. And having the money was a really nice place to be. It means that everybody wants to know you, everybody wants to interact with you. It's a really amazing place to be somebody who has the capital, because you're going to take this time to get to know all sorts of different people. Everyone's going to reach out to you, and everyone will take your call, which is really kind of a nice thing. It's very rare that you call someone and say, "Hi, I'm from XYZ venture firm," and they say, "No, thank you." They almost always take that call. So it is a really nice place to be on the venture side. And frankly, the company I was working for, RCT, was just a lovely bunch of people who had their heart in the right place and who were really, really smart about what they did. And I just saw that as a place that I'd probably retire. And if I hadn't started MedTech Innovator, I'm sure I'd still be working there.
Yeah, it sounds like a good side of the table to sit on. So, and also probably a lot of fun too, like you said, for someone who's highly innovative and likes to learn a lot about a lot of things. So that's really cool. And so MedTech Idol was born out of this experience, which is now MedTech Innovator. What was the early stages and the beginnings of that like? I remember, what I had seen from going through the program in 2015, but what was the foundational stages there? What was it like?
So it's a really good question. The early days of MedTech Innovator, which, as you said, were MedTech Idol, was a time when we were on the other side of the financial crisis, that had really made a big impact on the early stage venture landscape, especially in MedTech. And because, if you were to go back and look at the different venture funds, the year 2010 was a really telling time, because the venture capital funds in healthcare in general, and especially in medtech, were underwater. The vintage 2010 funds did terrible. And a lot of the limited partners who invested in the medtech space said, "Hey, we're not going to do this anymore." And they said to a lot of the funds, "If you want to continue being a recipient of our money, you'll be investing in something other than healthcare and certainly medtech." So a lot of the venture capital funds just, went away in early stage medtech. And after a couple of years of that, the entrepreneurs really got the signal, and they stopped going to a lot of the conferences where you would normally see them. So I noticed this most acutely at the Wilson Sonsini conference, which they do every single year in San Francisco in medical devices. And I sat down with Casey McGlynn, who heads that practice, during JP Morgan in January of 2013. And I said, "Hey, Casey, I don't know about you, but I've really noticed a real change at the conferences, including yours. The innovators aren't here. They're just not coming to the conferences anymore. And, you might see some, but nothing like it was before." And so I said, the real problem with that is that they're not making those connections, those hallway conversations, those, epiphanies, those, sitting down and talking to somebody who might become a team member and leave their company and join them. That wasn't happening. And they certainly weren't getting feedback from the industry. And so I said to Casey, "This is a real problem." And he goes, "You're right. What do you want to do about it?" And I said, "I don't know. We could do something like American Idol for medical technology at your conference, where we'd have companies pitch, and we'd have a panel, and the audience would pick the winner." He's like, "I love it. Let's do it." So in June of that year, we did what we called MedTech Idol, And it was the last session of the day at his conference. And that year in particular, in addition to the lack of capital, there was at that time a real lack of FDA transparency. There was a lot of other problems. It was just a gloom and doom kind of a year. And I remember panel after panel after panel during that conference was nothing but negativity. And then we did MedTech Idol, and we had 10 companies pitch who got up there and told their story. And it was fantastic, and it was fun, and the audience was, just loving it. The audience picked the winner, and afterwards, everyone came up to me and said, like, that was the greatest thing ever. Like, we got to do that. And David Cassidy came up to me, who at that time had his series of conferences prior to MedTech Strategist, and he said, Paul, we got to do this at my conference. This is great, and that led to what became MedTech Innovator the following year. Same idea, competitions. And then, as you said, in the year that you joined, 2015, we actually added on an accelerator because we realized that, beyond the little bit of coaching we were doing for companies, we had now attracted some strategics like J&J and Becton Dickinson, and then soon after Baxter, who all said, wow, like, we really want to be part of this. We want to help. And they were willing to mentor the companies for a longer period of time. So we created an accelerator, and the rest is history.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and since then as well, just to make it very clear and unequivocal, it's gone on to become the largest medtech incubator or accelerator program. Period. Right? Like, you've had, I think, over 1,000 companies now going through the program in some fashion, and creating really meaningful connections and truly impactful experience for those companies.
Yeah, MedTech Innovator is definitively the largest accelerator for medical technology in the world, as you said, which is really something that we have a lot of pride in. But it's not just volume. It's not just a number of companies. It's the highest in probably every metric you could have. We've got over 80 products in the market from our alumni. We've got companies who've raised over $3 billion in follow-on funding after MedTech Innovator. We've had 18 acquisitions from our alumni, 430 companies in total that are part of the portfolio. But as you said, thousands of companies that we've interacted with. We invite 20% of the applicants each year to pitch. And whether or not we select them to be part of the program, which, as we said, is a 4-month accelerator program, we're out there with a roadshow inviting companies to pitch to investors, strategics, healthcare providers, to regulatory agencies and many other stakeholders who are part of that journey. And people leave those road tour events with deals, with financings. So whether or not we invite them to be part of the program or not, we're making a huge impact on companies, which is really what we set out to do.
Yeah. Yeah, it's been transformative for me personally, and as a young founder, and was very fortunate to have gone through in 2015 and snuck our way into the cohort. You guys let us in, which is awesome. But it was transformative, right? And so some of those connections that I've made are still to mentors that I have to this day, and the connections and the network aspect. I think for a lot of entrepreneurs, it can be frustrating sometimes because you just are hungry, right? And you need capital to be able to move forward, but a lot of that comes as a byproduct of the connections you have and the network that you build and maintain. And so one of the first mentors I had, who's still a very active mentor in my life, is Mike Minogue, and that came through some of the partnerships that MedTech Innovator had developed with AdvaMed. And so in addition to Wilson Sonsini at their conference, you have very strong ties and partnerships with AdvaMed, which is the lobbying organization for the medtech and the med device industry. And they have an amazing conference that you guys are at every year, and plenty of other partnerships as well. But the networking aspect of what you do is really, it shows, I think, where your intent lies, right? Which is, you realize you only have so many companies that you can be hands-on with, but everybody that shows up or even applies gets feedback and gets meaningful connections, right? So, like, just because they don't get invited to the next round of applications doesn't mean you're not forwarding their stuff to a business development representative at Johnson & Johnson or at Bard or BD, which is awesome. So it's pretty amazing the way that you guys do that.
Thanks. Yeah, it is a big part of the the journey that I started out on, when we were talking before about being a VC, I said no to almost everybody, right? That's the job at a venture capital firm. Maybe you do a couple deals a year per partner. And that was the metric, right? You're trying to do a couple deals, and I'd look at 1,000, deals in a year and say no to all the rest. And yet I really liked a lot of those companies. And so I would go out and make introductions and connections and always try and help these companies, whether or not we invested. And it's the same idea, applying the same principles here at MedTech Innovator. Although I get to say yes to a lot more companies, back to scratching that itch. I mean, we have this year, from our 4 different cohorts that we have in medical devices in the US. Pediatrics has its own program. We have a biotools program for life science tools, and we have an Asia Pacific program for companies that are focused on the Asia market as their first markets. In total, 85 companies that we accept into our accelerators now annually. That's a lot of companies. And as you said, I'm touching a lot more of them along the way. So this is a really great opportunity to help a lot of companies. And that network that we've built that you mentioned, I think is probably the best asset we have. I mean, yes, we have 27 amazing corporate partners. We have, relationships with all the regulatory agencies in the US and other countries. We've got, literally hundreds and thousands of people who are involved in our program during the year in different ways. That's amazing. But it's that peer network of entrepreneurs that really has an incredible ripple effect. As you said, the capital will come if you have the right network and obviously you have the right opportunity. I mean, you can't have a terrible technology and raise capital, but if you have something that's really meaningful, and you are out there struggling, trying to raise capital, but a lot of people who understand you and your conviction and understand the need, they'll know somebody, they'll make an introduction, and you may have to have a lot of conversations, but eventually you'll get to the right person and you'll raise that capital. Or it might be about vendors. It might be you're just trying to decide who to use for that clinical study, or you're trying to decide what vendor to use for your manufacturing or for your sterile barrier or whatever you're working on. You don't want to just go with the one who's down the street, which is the problem, frankly, that we're solving at MedTech Innovator. As I like to say, we're bringing the world's best ecosystem to the world's best startups. And that's really what we're trying to do, is solve for this disconnected world that we're living in MedTech, and connect people. So I agree completely, Derek. I think that network is everything. And, it's what we strive to always innovate on and get better at. And we're constantly doing that. And even in this Zoom world that we've had for the last couple of years, I think we've done a really good job of it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. I would agree. And I think that opens up a good conversation to have about adversity and failure. And so you help a lot of first-time founders, first-time CEOs, young entrepreneurs, and provide a lot of mentorship. And raising money as a first-time founder in medtech is probably one of the hardest possible things you could choose to do in the path if you're an entrepreneur, right? Like starting a software company, building an app, making a chat bot, all that stuff. Not as challenging as this, right? And I think it's highly nuanced. There's so many functional areas that you have to be good at or proficient in, or have people that can support you with. And so it's fraught with failure and fraught with risk. So I'm interested to hear your thoughts and reflections on, having done this for almost 10 years now, some of the companies that have, succeeded and how they approach failure and the mindset, and even some that haven't, fared as well. If you have any thoughts about that, or what you say to these companies as they're moving through the program.
Boy, I'll tell you, we've interacted with amazing people along the way, yourself included, Derek. And we've seen people through all sorts of ups and downs on their journey. And as you know, it is not easy, right? You've said this yourself, and I say to people all the time, you really have to want to be in healthcare. It is not a space for people who aren't passionate about what they're doing each day. It's much easier to go and build a photo sharing app, or the next Clubhouse or something else. That's way easier. But if you're passionate about healthcare, if you want to make a difference on people's lives, this is definitely the double bottom line, as they say, right? You can both make money and, more importantly, improve lives. And I think that's the thing that's always so meaningful about it for me is, as we go through and we watch the videos, like all of our companies make those 1 minute videos. And as they do that, and I get to watch other people watch these videos, they're always moved. That's the goal, right? You want to move people with the story. And to see people go like, oh my God, like, wow, that's amazing. I just want to help that company. How do I do it? Like, that's what we're kind of going for here. And so what I've learned from companies along the way is that it's not just about the unmet medical need that they're trying to tackle. It's not just about the technology. It's not just about the team. These are all really important ingredients. It's not just about reimbursement. These are all the things you have all these boxes you have to check, but it's the story that you're telling. And I think that's something that a lot of people miss. And I spend a good part of my time helping people perfect their story along the way, and where there's a hole, where there's a gap, sometimes it's just a gap in the story. They have the data, they have the evidence, they have the video, they have something that they could show that convinces people, but they're not doing it. They're telling it in the wrong way. And other times, there's a gap, there's a real gap where they're telling the story, and then you realize, but you haven't told me why, or you haven't told me what the impact is going to be on outcomes, or you haven't told me the real value proposition. And then they go, well, we haven't really figured it out yet. And you go, okay, well, let's go figure it out. Here's 3 people who can help you with that. But it's getting that story right, and the story is everything. It's why we make people tell a 1 minute story. As part of MedTech Innovator, they have to create something that looks kind of like a commercial, that tells you about the problem they're solving, the team who's working on it, the solution they've come up with, and why you want to join them on that journey. The patients are going to be impacted, and so on. We make them do that in 1 minute because if you can do it in 1 minute, then you can do it in 5 or 10 or whatever you have after that. But that's really the attention span that most people have is about a minute, maybe even less in some cases. And so I think that's a really important thing, and just something that frankly a lot of people get wrong along the way. And I'm super passionate about helping people tell their story correctly, because I hate to see people fail for the wrong reason. And oftentimes it's because they just don't know how to tell their story. And the other thing I'll say, the other mistake, a big mistake that people make, is they don't get out of their local ecosystem. They're in Denver, or they're in Kansas or somewhere, or they're in San Francisco. It doesn't really matter. They've got this local ecosystem of people who've been supporting them at their university or their incubator, wherever it was that this technology started. And they pitch, and people get up and they all clap and they go, great job, Derek. And then you walk out of the room and everybody looks at each other and they go, oof, that's never going to make it. That's terrible. And you go, that's just the wrong signal we're sending to all these people. They clap on the back, like, great job. And that's not what people need to hear. They need to hear the honest truth. You need someone to say, I don't understand why you're doing that. I don't understand why that guy is your CEO. I don't understand why you've chosen that indication. I don't understand whatever it is. I don't know why you are doing a 510K. This should really be a de novo or a PMA or whatever it is. Whatever the thing is, people don't tell them the truth. They go back and say, oh, that's a mistake they made, but they don't tell them. And that fundamental thing is just the death of a lot of these companies, because these people go out there and they go, I don't know, I'm giving presentations and everyone says we're doing great, but I just can't raise money. Or maybe it's the culture in the company, whatever it is. There's so many ups and downs. If you're sitting on boards and you see these things enough, you start to have that pattern recognition and you go, wow, I can see these things. So that's, I think that's how I'd sum up this. The thing I've learned about companies is to tell them the truth, be transparent, when you're giving feedback to people, to be obviously be truthful if you're the entrepreneur, but I'm saying if you're someone giving feedback, and then, of course, make sure people tell the right story.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, anybody coming into the industry, right? Like your first time, you're probably going to be terrible at pitching and fundraising. But the beauty of that, I think, is it can be learned, right? And with enough practice and enough skill, you can figure it out. And the environment that you're in should be conducive to that and create the opportunity for you to learn how to tell that story correctly. But I would claim, and I don't know if you would agree, you have way more expertise than this than I do, but you can have all of the right assets, right? But if you just can't get in front of people and tell a basic, compelling story and why they should care, most of the times, like, they don't care about the technology, and the market opportunity don't stand alone, right? Like people want to see, or at least they have an expectation, I think in most cases, to see someone standing up as the leader of the company who can, clearly and concisely articulate why they should care and inspire confidence, to convince them to invest. And so you can definitely see when people do it wrong, right? And it's painful, right? And it just, like, you cringe, but like I feel that way when I'm in the audience, right? And you see somebody, you're like, oh man, everybody's rooting for you, and you're just like, just cringeworthy. But and I've been on the other side of that too. When I first started, I was terrible, right? I had no ability to do this. It took a long time and a lot of practice, and thanks to a lot of feedback from great mentors and advisors, and going through the program like MedTech Innovator, and putting yourself in those positions, you can learn it, and you can get better and be able to refine that narrative that you need to have. But I don't know if you'd agree, if in general people need that story, or if you think there's instances where people don't even care and they just invest anyway. But that's been my kind of
Yeah,
observation.
I think it's pretty rare that people just invest anyways in healthcare. In the tech world, it's very common for people to go, I just want to get into that deal, and they just write a check, even though someone goes like, there's no business model, there's no, the founder's a jerk, they won't even take my call, whatever it is, but they're like, I just got to get into that deal. And that's a totally different space than healthcare. In healthcare, you really have to believe in that entrepreneur, that they are gonna run through all those walls, right? That they're gonna get through over these hurdles. They're gonna be able to deal with persistent failure and no's and all the things that come along with healthcare, with real disappointment along the way, in a very different way. It's not easy to pivot in healthcare. Some people do, but it's very different. In many cases, it's the end of the company, and they have to completely recapitalize and start over if they want to pivot, because the economics don't make sense anymore. So healthcare, you really have to believe in that entrepreneur. We at MedTech Innovator, we always say we sit down with all of our judges, like we literally will have 90 people in the room who are judging, and we sit around and we talk about the 30 companies that just pitched us at a particular event, and we go through them one by one. And the company can check all the right boxes. Oh, it's an unmet medical need. It's got a patented technology. It's got some early evidence showing that it works. It's got it's got reimbursement, or it's got an area that we can see why it's going to get covered, and so on. It's got all these compelling things. And then someone goes, yeah, but the founder is just not coachable. I asked him questions, and they were argumentative and dismissive, and I just don't like them. And we're like, all right, great, moving on. And no one says, yeah, but it's such an unmet medical need. Who cares that the guy's a jerk? We just move right on to the next one, because there's just too many important unmet medical needs that have all those criteria that I just talked about, in terms of an opportunity with people who are passionate, and who not just passionate, but are open to realizing that they don't know everything. And, we have serial entrepreneurs that come back year after year to MedTech Innovator, who, sometimes I've heard judges look up and go, wait a second, you're so-and-so, and you already worked for J&J, and you've started 3 companies. Why are you pitching us? Why aren't you just out there? And they always say, like, because this is the best, network there is in medical technology. And I want to come back. And there are people who've been through MedTech Innovator, had their company be acquired, and they come back and they enter again with their next company, because they realize that there's so much to be gained from this network and this process. And I think that's really, as I said, the thing that we want to see is someone who wants to be here, who wants to work with us. It's a great tip for investors in general, for when you're pitching an investor, is to know why you'd like to work with them. What value is that investor going to add, and be able to go in there and say it, and be able to say, like, hey, Derek, you've got this amazing network. You're a veteran, and you really, you're a leader, and you understand leadership. And frankly, I, as somebody who, I'm a young leader, and I don't really have that in my DNA, and I'd love to learn that from you, how you can really, help, provide me with some of that expertise that you have. And then you go like, hey, this guy really knows me, and they've researched me, and they understand that, what kind of value I bring to the table.
Yeah.
A lot of people don't do that. They just walk in and go like, we need $2 million, and we still have 500,000 left. And, and that's not that exciting to the investor. The investor wants to be wanted, too, and valued. So, it's that whole thing, really kind of getting that, and being passionate, and being genuine, and authentic, and not fake in that process. It's pretty obvious when people aren't legitimate. So, that is a differential in healthcare, and it's something that we believe firmly in. We definitely have that. We're going to work with people we want to work with, kind of a rule.
Yeah. Yeah, I think going above and beyond like that is absolutely essential and critical, right, for success. Because especially in this industry, right, there's long lead times. It's a long ride, and when someone gives you a check and you're an investor, right, you're married, right. It's harder to divorce an investor than it is to divorce your wife, probably in many cases. And so, not only above and beyond likability and everything else, I think one of the key themes you hit on, which is absolutely essential, and I think everybody's looking for, is humility and coachability, right? And I think for any leaders that are figuring this out, sometimes initially it can be a little bit challenging because you have to appear competent and knowledgeable and present confidently that you know what you're talking about, and almost like you know everything, but at the same time you have to be receptive to feedback and walk a fine line and be coachable and listen as well. And so I think for a lot of people it may take time to figure that out, but it's essential, and I think it's an absolute deal killer for most of the investors that I've met if someone's not coachable or not humble. And so that's a great point. So that's awesome. And so for people who are interested in MedTech Innovator, you can learn more at the website, which is medtechinnovator.com, right?
Yes, but mainly medtechinnovator.org.
Oh,
Either one works. So either one's just fine. But we are a nonprofit, so we go by medtechinnovator.org as our primary handle. And yeah, if you're out there, if you're an innovator, and you've got something that you think is important in medical, we'd love you to reach out to us. Our cycle opens up at the end of October for the following year. And then we close applications in January. So we'd love to have you apply. Our end of our program in the U.S. Is wherever AdvaMed's conference is each year, and this year it's in Minneapolis, September 29th. And then, as I said, we open the doors again, and people can apply for the following cycle. So we highly encourage you to reach out. And again, whether or not even if we don't invite you to pitch, we invite about 20% of the applications to pitch, and we have, under a 5% acceptance rate. So, we had this year over 1,100 companies apply to our U.S. program. We only took 50. So it's a real small percentage that we eventually take. But even just applying to MedTech Innovator means your application is going to be read by at least 3, if not 10 or 20 in some cases, of people who are exactly what I talked about before. They're investors, they're strategics. Every one of our applications is read by our strategic partners, and we have 27 of those. We have clinicians, we have healthcare systems, you name it. If they're a stakeholder, they're in the mix, patients, and so on. So, we want to make sure that the right applications are seen by the right people. So just applying, even if we don't choose you to pitch, means you're going to get read, you're going to get seen. And this is not a chore in participating in MedTech Innovator. There's a lot of these kinds of pitch programs and things that are out there that people see as a chore, and they go, "Oh, I gotta look at those applications," and they have that because the quality is low, and because it's not targeted to them. We have a very secret sauce kind of thing that we've built, in terms of the people who are reviewing for us, and we align everything with what they're interested in, so that everybody has this kind of magical feeling on the reviewing side for us, where they're like, "Wow, I just looked at 5 things that were exactly what I'm interested in. This is great. How do I do more of this?" Like, there's never anyone who says, "Stop sending me applications to review." Everyone always says, "How can I see more?" And it's because we only show them what they want to see. And that's, as I said, there's a secret sauce behind that. But I do encourage people to apply. It's worth it. We have people who apply 3 or 4 years before we even invite them to pitch. So just like a venture fund, when you may have to pitch, multiple times before someone finally says, "Okay, come on in." Same thing here. So please do go to medtechinnovator.org. And I look forward to learning about you and your technology.
Yeah. And there's a lot of benefits too that we didn't mention, which are pretty quantitative and simple, right? And so there's prize money, which is no equity, no attachment, just cash, right? So if you make it to the end and you win, I don't know what the prize money will be for this next year, but it's a lot and meaningful for early stage companies.
Yeah, we have in total, we're giving away over $1 million a year now in non-dilutive funding between our different programs, and that's pretty impactful for these companies. And we've had companies that literally have said, like, you're winning that prize funded my company for 4 months. Where we used the prize money to do a clinical study. That's transformative. So it is one of the benefits, is getting into our competitions, and we love that. It's a really nice opportunity to give away some money. But just the program itself, I always say, is the prize.
Yeah, I would agree. And so definitely check it out. And before we go too, I want to talk more about MedTech Innovator, specifically on the leadership side. And so really curious the lessons you've learned creating this out of nothing, right? And then making a decision to turn it into a 501c3 nonprofit, and then growing it from, a one-man show to how many people are on your team now?
So MedTech Innovator has 10 people on our team between our US and our Asia programs.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah. And so obviously it's been a labor of love, and you've put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to building this, but curious about how that journey's been, and any challenges you've faced and overcome them. Because obviously raising money as a nonprofit is just as hard, or maybe even harder in some cases as well, than raising money as a for-profit entity. So what's it been like?
You're right. It is much harder as a nonprofit than a for-profit. So we'd made the decision to go nonprofit from the beginning. We wanted to have this level playing field, no strings attached kind of an infrastructure, which we do. And that way, all of our corporate partners, none of them have any strings in these companies. And there's a lot of other benefits too. But it means that if I want to expand my team, I can't just say, "Hey, I need to go raise $2 more million. Investors, come on in, and we're going to go hire these additional team members." I have to go out and convince either more partners to come on who donate to us in the form of grants, or philanthropy. It's an area for us that we actually really haven't explored, and that we're only starting to do now. So we've been supported by industry, the companies like J&J and Becton Dickinson and Baxter and Olympus and so on, have supported us for these years. RCT Ventures, the fund that I started at, is our biggest supporter annually. They just gave us the initial capital to start our biotools program, our life science tools program. So that's great. But one of the huge areas for us is philanthropy. I think, for us to have people who are out there who are disease focused or patient focused, and who are saying, or just want to support healthcare, this is a really great way to focus on commercialization, because the money that comes to us is going to have a major impact, as you've said, on the entrepreneurs and their chances for success. And it's not just, about putting people on stage in a competition or getting them the corporate mentors. It's about saying, let's stop and just assess what you're doing and see, is this the right path to reach patients? We want to make sure the technology reaches patients, and we want to make sure it does so with the right value proposition so that people will buy the product. Because there's a lot of products that are approved that don't get purchased. We want to make sure these things are going to actually be purchased and usable by our healthcare system. And so, that as a core kind of thing is something that a lot of philanthropy sits out there and says, hey, I want to improve lives, whether it's diabetes or whether it's some other focus. They say, I want to make an impact on veterans. I want to make an impact on whatever. And the way they usually do that is by putting money into basic science at a university somewhere. And that has a lot of value. But there's also a lot of value on the translational side, on the commercialization side. And it can't all be on the NIH or some of these other organizations to fund that translation. So that's where we come in, is making sure that these technologies really do reach the patients. And so we believe that there's a real role for philanthropy in working with MedTech Innovator, because they're focused on particular diseases in many cases, and we are too. So that's something that's going to be a big thing for us, I think, in the future, is aligning heavily with philanthropy. It's something that we haven't done to date. And you talked before about challenges and everything. For me personally, the challenge is I want to expand my team. I want to increase our capacity to do the good that we're doing, and it's not that easy to go do that. And that's, so I'm putting that appeal out there, I guess, as we're talking right now. If you're out there as as someone who supports healthcare, and someone who really understands and kind of aligns with what I'm talking about here today, about wanting to see technology reach patients and with the appropriate value, I encourage you to reach out to me, because I'm looking for people who can help us with that, both financially in terms of supporting us, but also as a partner. We're looking for organizations that have patients and have key opinion leaders who are part of their mission and the way they align themselves. We want those people to come to us and help, because I think the patient part of the story is where everyone should be focused, patient at the center. And most of our partners will say those words all the time, but there are organizations that's all they're doing is advocating for the patients. I want to know those people better. I want to expand our ability to do good. So, for me, that is the challenge. There are other accelerators that are way smaller than us that have 30 people on staff. To your question from before, they have 40 people on staff. I have 10. And I'd like to hire the best people there are. I want people to come, and they come knocking on my door, and they'll say, hey, I work for such and such accelerator, and I see what you're doing at MedTech Innovator. I'd love to talk to you. And I go, great. And we talk for a little bit. And I, somewhere along the way, I say, hey, what's your salary expectations? And they go, oh, I was making, $250 a year or $300 a year, whatever they're making right now. And I go, boy, I can't compete with that right now. And they say, oh, maybe I could take a little less, but it's still beyond my budget in some cases. And I don't want that to ever hold us up. I want to be able to bring the best people on, who are better than me, who know more than me, and who can add to, our overall culture and mission. And so, yeah, fundraising as a nonprofit is definitely something that, I think is really important. And it's something that if there was one skill I'd like to get better at right now, it's going out and really fundraising as a philanthropy. We've had people write us checks to date and lots of people knock on our door, but it's usually, as I said, one of those corporates who say, hey, MedTech Innovator is seeing thousands of things in a year. This is a great way for my team to get involved and to give back. But, that's very different than the philanthropic version of this. So for me, that's the challenge that, I want to overcome is not worrying about if we're going to have enough money next year to do what we're doing. I want to have long-term support.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. Yeah, that's a tough nut to crack, right? Long-term sustainability within these types of organizations, and it's something I think every nonprofit deals with at a certain stage, right? Once you make it out of the nascent stage and you've attained some success and have some funds coming in, how do you continue to grow that, sustain it over time, and then grow if you're going to try to grow, right? And living year to year, paycheck to paycheck is hard, right? And so finding those people that can commit for 3, 5, 10 years or endow certain things is hard. But to your point, I think for anybody that's condition focused or has a calling for that, I can honestly say that I don't think there's a more impactful way to deploy capital to get translational technology out and in the world where it can do good. And so something as small as, like J&J does the $150,000 prize for, mental health for veterans, right? And hundreds of companies with amazing technologies will come to present and share these sorts of things, and one company will win, but all of those companies that are applying are spurred and brought forth by the fact that there's cash and somebody putting cash up front to do this. And so, if it's MS from the National MS Society, or melanoma, or whatever it is, those types of things are, I think, are incredibly impactful. And I would say, if you want to see the 50 best technologies for any condition, putting that capital out to create one of these targeted or focused challenges through MedTech Innovator is a very simple way to do that, right? You guys could put that together in a heartbeat, because you have so many breadth of people, and if people want to see it, they just, it's as simple as writing a check to do that, or getting involved in some manner to do that. And so, if you're in a family office or any sort of these, foundations or other, advocacy organizations and interested in that, I will personally put my name on the line and say I can't think of a better organization to support in that regard. Yeah, so that's awesome. And then, so the challenges associated with that too, I know you're glossing over. I'm trying to pin you down for some good stories about hard times, but I think the theme that I keep coming back to, and what it sounds like you've done is, one, you're incredibly passionate about the mission that you're on, right, and the purpose that you have. And then two, it sounds like you've been able to attract and maintain and recruit some really amazing people who are as committed to the vision as you are. And then that way you're able to have that outsized impact. And it sounds like those two things seem to have carried you through a lot of the challenges that are, accustomed with startups, whether it's nonprofit or otherwise.
Yeah, I know you're trying to pin me down on a tough story.
It's all good. You don't have to give me an example.
I was going to say, I could tell you, as an entrepreneur, I've had tons of stories along the way where things failed, or huge setbacks, or we thought we were going to go public and then we didn't go public, and the market changed and had to go raise capital a different way. I've got plenty of those stories. As MedTech Innovator, we've really been we've been very fortunate that we went into this with funding from the beginning, which was supported by RCT, the fund that I was working for at the time, and J&J. The two of them put up really kind of equally the money that got us started in the first place, and what effectively spun MedTech Innovator out of RCT, where I was working. So I had that, and I had multiple years of support. So I knew that that it was going to be funded, and I had RCT, who I knew if things didn't work out, I could go back. So I had kind of that cushion going into this. And then, as I said, people came out of the woodwork and said, "Hey, love what you're doing. We'd love to give you more money." So it was never something where we were going, "Oh my God, we're going to run out of money tomorrow," or "We can't make payroll next week," or "We all have to take big pay cuts." Or we had a setback with a major thing. You would think COVID was a setback, but for us, even though we do so much of what we do in person along the way, and that in-person component is so important, we pivoted overnight, because we've been using Zoom for 3 years when COVID hit. So it was no stranger to us. We pivoted literally overnight to being fully virtual and didn't miss a beat. And all the systems that we've built over time, we were able to completely use in the virtual world. And I'm not saying that I don't miss being in person. We do. I can't wait to be back in Minneapolis at AdvaMed's conference in a couple of weeks. But the point is, this is the difficult part for us. As I said, the wall that I've run into, if I've run into any wall at MedTech Innovator, it's going, okay, if I'm gonna really expand what we do now, and I have lots of ways I want to do that, I've got to bring on a bigger team, and I don't want to do that one partner at a time, which is the way I've built it to date. I've said, we're talking to, let's say, like a trade association for a particular specialty, and they've said, "Hey, we'd love to work with you, and and it's $100,000 we'll give you for next year." And okay, so I can hire one person to, barely to work on that. It's really because I'm leveraging multiple people. And I do that one at a time right now. And maybe I get 3 or 4 of those new ones in a year, and I can hire 3 or 4, 2 new people, whatever. But as I said, some of the best people are really expensive. And they're saying, they're saying, "Hey, I work for so-and-so, and I only make $300,000 a year." So, and I'm like, only make 300 grand a year. So that, to me, that's the challenge, is that I want to hire the best. I want to blow out, what we're doing to be a much bigger impact. We're making a great impact right now, Derek, don't get me wrong, but it could be so much more. I mean, there's so many more things that I want to do. And those things are a side project right now. Those things are the 5% time or the 10% time kind of projects that I frankly do on the weekend, and others do. And, with the right funding, I could do a lot more of that. And, we're really lucky that people believe in what we're doing. We've got great partners, but I would, and we have people who've given us money for 2 years or 3 years, but I want to be able to go, I've got funding for 10 years. I've got significantly more than I'm spending. I've got a surplus in the bank, for the next 3 years that we're not going to touch, or 5 years or whatever. But I'm going to hire people when I need them. And I'm just going to do what I need to do to, expand this. And I can't do that, at a certain point right now. I definitely, as I said, I kind of grow organically, and I'd like to be more like you said. I'd like to be able to go, hey, I'm going to raise some capital in a significant way, and then go make a big impact. I'm kind of at the limit to what I can do organically now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a big challenge, and that's something that I struggle with a lot as well with the nonprofits that I work with, is uh, becoming fully sustainable, right? And getting to the point where you're endowed for a period of time, or that endowment is significant enough that the interest alone, cannot carry your operating budget, and you have that flexibility, right? That financial flexibility to move forward and continue to carry out your mission. But it's so hard, right? Because it takes someone who's not only incredibly wealthy, or a foundation that's incredibly supportive, but um, someone who's willing to put that type of capital to work and put it on the line for the mission that you're a part of. And so I think
Well,
in
hopefully
times of
they're
short
listening to
funding,
Forward, right? Hopefully they're out there listening to Forward right
you
now, and
never
they're going,
know.
"Oh my
It
gosh,
might
this is
be.
this is where I want to write a check to Derek and one to Paul, split it."
Yeah.
But no, seriously, I mean, like that. I mean,
Yeah.
that's my hope, is that
Yeah.
we're going to run into somebody at one of these events or one of the things we're doing, and someone's going to go, "Wow, um,
Yeah.
how do I write a big check? Because I want to expand your capacity to do
Yeah.
good." And and that's, we just haven't done that. We've been very industry focused, or kind of service oriented, if you will, and that, like, a lot of the funding we have comes from federal agencies.
Mm.
BARDA. We're an accelerator for BARDA in health security innovation. We were doing that before the pandemic, and I'm really happy BARDA's out there, because it's saved a lot of our lives, and
Mm.
made a huge impact.
Yeah.
But that's definitely, if we look at the world, it's, if I look at the people who've supported us financially, it's been a lot of that. It's been going, from one agency to another, who says, hey, we see what you're doing, and we'd love to give you some support in this particular area, a one at a time, small amount at a time. And, we want to make a bigger impact. So, it
Yeah.
takes bigger dollars.
Yeah, it's awesome. Yeah, and I think too, though, the last thing I'll wrap up on too, which I think is interesting, is probably one of the reasons why you haven't had massive challenges with MedTech Innovator is because of you've been very intelligent and disciplined as an entrepreneur. So obviously you run 8 companies prior to that. You were a venture capitalist for at least 5 years before you started uh, MedTech Idol at the time, MedTech Innovator now. And then you've been very disciplined and cautious, I think, in your approach to doing so, right? You didn't quit your day job. You were working on this as a passion project and continued to resource it accordingly, and have only taken on risk as you've been able to tolerate it, right? And been very cautious and conservative with it. So I think one point, in addition to all the other learning lessons we've talked about, is with skill, right? You can reduce risk in a way that improves your outlook for success and sustainability.
Yes, indeed. It takes time, and it takes it definitely, that, reducing risk. You just said it right. That's really what it's about. Um, I'm not going to risk our ability to do what we do, in the way that I could, is if we were a for-profit company. It's definitely different as a nonprofit. So the kind of risk we can take is very different here. And we have to be, for us, it's not a binary, or we're going to fail, or we're going to succeed. and we're swinging for the fences for a huge win for everybody, and people are going to load in cash because they know we can do that. For us, we're helping one company at a time, and maybe we're doing 85 of them, this year, and hopefully hundreds next year, and always expanding that. But that, the ability to do that is very different as a nonprofit. So, I'm thrilled that I know you've been involved with many nonprofits, Derek, and you understand that world. And, I really enjoy it. And I've told my wife and my kids that, this is my last job. Like, I love my job. I don't want to change what I do. I want to add on to what I do. But for someone who is always easily distracted and wants to go do something different every couple of years, it's the best job I've ever had in my entire life. I get to constantly, see new amazing people, meet literally the best innovators in the world, and see the most amazing technologies that are solving major problems for all of us. And I know that I'm having an impact. And
Yeah.
what more could you ask? So I love it, and I wouldn't change a thing except I'd have more money.
It's awesome. Hell yeah. Well, thanks for your time, Paul. Really appreciate it. I know we're over time. I'll let you go and get back to your day, but truly appreciate you making time to come on the show and share some very insightful lessons, which, I'm fortunate to have learned firsthand from you and hope to share with our audience. So thank you so much.
Hey, thank you, Derek. You are an inspiration to us all. Always have been since the first day we sat down and had sandwiches together over right off of Olympic or whatever it was, Olympic and Sepulveda over there at Which. It's been great getting to know you over the years and watching your growth. It's a privilege to work with you. So thanks for having me on here today, Derek.
Too kind. Pleasure's all mine, and thank you for all that you've done for me personally and for the community as a whole. This has been an episode of Forward with Derek Herrera and Paul Grand. Thanks for tuning in. Hope you'll have a great week.